In spite of the clocks on the wall, my uh, cell phone says that we have 1 minute. So if you'll take your seats, please. Thank you.
And the screen says echo one, so you could have any time you want.
Flip a coin.
The mayor's gonna fly. I don't,
I know. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Committee of the Whole to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Matthey,
Here.
Alderman Sage. Here. Alderman Malamoy.
Here.
Alderman Burgess. Here. Alderman Painter. Here. Alderman Schmidt. Here. Alderman Black. Here. Alderman Hammond. Here. Alderman Bray. Here. Mayor Renner.
Here. Thank you very much. We have one individual who has signed up for public comment, and that's Gary Lambert. Gary, you know the drill.
I do. I've been criticized lately for not living up to my civic responsibilities. So here we go. We're going to talk about the Coliseum tonight. And I asked Maria earlier, it would be nice if the city would release at the same time as those operating costs are reported to also make available total cost of the Coliseum, including the bonds, the capital improvements, the replacement costs, whatever that might be. Got a bunch of these going through here. The water and sewer insurance, as that was being presented, whenever that was, a week or two ago, I believe the gentleman said that that would end up in a net decrease in labor. There would be an initial setup time and some confusion time to set up those records, but after that, that would actually end up being a reduction in staff time. Yet, once again, the city arbitrarily, I realize it hasn't passed yet, but he just picked a number out of the sky, he said, 10%. Let's just add a 10% fee to that. Could be 5%, could be nothing. Think about it a little bit. Tonight, you've got a number of initiatives. I was hoping I'd find some in there to do with cost savings. I didn't see any. I pulled out a dollar bill. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. One of the suggestions is that we charge people for paying in cash. I've been on MetroNet for about a year now. In my August billing, I saw a new fee on there. It's Bloomington amusement tax, $3.80. And at the same time, there's still that franchise fee, and the mayor and I had a difference of opinion a few years ago as to whether or not a franchise fee was in fact a tax. I believe it is. The mayor thought otherwise, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, there's $8.55 for the privilege of having television and internet. What else we got here? Good news. Never be completely negative. I saw a rider today on the Purple Line. Thank you.
Thanks. We move right along to consideration of approving the Committee of the Whole minutes from August 20th, 2018, this year, and then April 16th, also of this year, 2018. Are there any corrections, additions to those minutes, or a motion to approve as presented? Alderwoman Schmidt.
I know that there have been some corrections made, and with those corrections, I'd like to make a motion that we approve them.
Okay. Moved as corrected by Alderwoman Schmidt. Is there a second? Second by Alderwoman Bray. Any further discussion? And do we have to do this roll call? Is that, I can do this? Okay. All right. Start vote. Here we go. Okay, the motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce. Madam Clerk, we move on to presentation by VenueWorks of the 2018 annual report, and we have approximately a 5-minute presentation and approximately a 5-minute council discussion. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Cannon.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having us. I am here to present the fiscal year 18 annual report for the Gressinger Motors Arena. I know that all of you received the report in full, so I'm only going to cover a few things that I wanted to point out in the entire report. I think the explanations within the report are fairly robust, but I will, of course, be available for questions. And I have to wear glasses now, so I'm going to put my glasses on and finish up a few things here. One of the things that we look at in the overall report is the ability to drive revenue to the arena. And revenues really in our business are about attendance. And lack of attendance is really the difficult thing that we faced last year. Attendance was down across the board. Number of events was very similar to the previous fiscal year, but overall our number of bodies in the building was not up to where we expected or what we would hope to have reached. And that definitely affects us in mostly in food and beverage revenue, facility fees, the things that you can count on when someone purchases a ticket to come to the arena. We did really well with family shows. Our family shows did great. Families that came to those shows had such a great experience. Our Illinois high school events are always very popular, and the attendance for all of those events continues to increase year after year. In fact, the cheerleading event has split up their Friday into 2 separate events because there were so many people that wanted to attend. They were encroaching on each other's ability to see the kids perform. So that was a big benefit for us as well this year. We did have the naming rights contract signed during fiscal year 18, so that was another big thing that we were able to take care of during that year, and that was a benefit to us in ways of sponsorship funds. As far as the overall revenue, of course, that is not even close to where we expected to be. Revenues were very tough for us last year. On the other side, the expenses we held back as best we could. We kept expenses down. We kept making sure as we were building events that we were bringing in the right number of people. We made sure that all of the expenditures that we were using during those events were on par for what we were expecting to have in attendance, and we tried very hard to keep those expenditures as clean as possible. We did have some bigger expenditures last year. The dasher boards were installed, so we had a lot of expenditures related to that during the season. We did have some labor costs, of course, as we were taking old dasher boards out and installing the new ones and getting the ice back in for the team to be able to play. But the overall aesthetic of the arena is greatly improved. And if any of you have been to the arena since those dasher boards were installed last December, it looks great. And just as a side note, the new LED lighting that went in over the seating area this past summer makes it look even better. So hopefully you'll get the chance to come out and see that during the hockey season this year. Overall, concession stand equipment, we're continually battling some of the older equipment. As far as repair costs goes, we did spend quite a bit in concession equipment repairs this year, or fiscal 18, I should say, and we will continue to review each of those pieces of equipment when the cost of the repair is in a huger percentage of the total than it would be to replace it. We are using operating funds to replace that equipment as needed. So we are keeping very close tabs on any of the expenditures for repairs for all of that equipment as well. As far as the variance to the budget, obviously, as I noted, the reason why we fell short was really the attendance, but keeping in mind that this particular budget was built during fiscal year 16 or 17, so late fall of 16. And VenueWorks had really only been operating the building for a few months, and of those months, several of them were summer months where there wasn't any activity in the building. So their base of knowledge was strictly previous information given to them and other buildings that they operate that are of similar size and similar markets. So that was where those numbers came from. They were not accurate, and we can't go back and change that, but we can look forward as we look to 19, having had that full year of experience in the building. Our fiscal year 19 budget we are really confident is more accurate and we will be attainable. It will be attainable for us. Let's see. One of the questions that we've had overall is advertising for events. And just to give you an idea, we do spend quite a bit in advertising. We spent over $130,000 advertising the non-game events, so non-sporting events in the building. So that was 11 events, $130,000 was spent. That doesn't include the promotional and ticket giveaways, mentions for ticket giveaways. So on top of that, there was about another $100,000 worth of free advertising that we received as we were purchasing the advertising on the radio stations and television stations and newspapers. So that is a number that I thought was important to share with you. We do have quite a big social media following, and as people are becoming more and more digital these days, we do share all of our information on all of our social media channels, and we do have a database of people who have subscribed, meaning that they asked us to send them information, of over 80,000 people. So we do get the message out for every event that we book at the arena. And then finally, I just wanted to share, hockey and football, they do their own advertising. It doesn't come out of our budget, but they are responsible to do advertising. And so we are carefully monitoring those advertising expenditures as well. Then finally, looking ahead to fiscal year 19, we have quite a big lineup getting started. That's the list of people that are shows that are currently on sale. We have 3 other new shows that are contracted and ready to be announced in the next 30 days, and we're certainly seeking additional events as well. And as of this moment, we are currently ahead of budget for fiscal year 19, and we hope to continue that trend.
Okay. Thank you. Questions, comments? Alderwoman Hellman?
Thank you, Lynn. You said that revenue equals attendance, which I understand. Why? Do you have any idea why attendance was lower than you expected it to be?
I think no. I mean, we did notice that obviously we had lower attendance at some of our concerts than we had anticipated. We look at a concert, we look at what we think we can book as far as what we think the number of tickets that will be sold. We didn't reach all of those goals at all of those shows. We do have, the football team games that didn't play during fiscal year 18. Those were counted during that fiscal year as revenue that we did not realize. So there were some issues with that as well.
Any idea why the concerts? I mean, what?
And we try, every time you book a show, it's sort of you're looking at other venues, what they've drawn as far as attendance. You look at your market, what you think you can draw, and you take a guess at what you're going to get. And sometimes you hit it, and sometimes you don't. A lot of times we didn't last year. Sometimes you exceed them, and we try to exceed them every single time.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Schmidt.
Yes, I have a question about advertising, but on the other side of the ledger, on the profit and loss, there's in income, there's a negative variance for sponsorship and advertising. Is that the naming rights, or what is that about?
Right, so in that is not just the naming rights, but all of the interior signage in the arena, all of those lit boards, the backlit boards that you see on the scoreboard and above the vomitories in the seating area, and then the digital boards outside the arena. We also sell space on those.
So we're lagging behind in that, or what's
Yeah,
going on
the
there?
expectations, when VenueWorks first came into the market, they brought with them someone who was very specialized and very successful in sponsorship sales. So I think they thought the that person's previous experience would carry over into this market. I think we faced some challenges with the building unexpectedly, and that kind of turned that number a little negative for us. So we did not meet those expectations.
Also, from time to time I get comments and questions about whether we're going after sort of edgier concerts, I guess I call them EDM, hip-hop, that kind of thing, that are going to draw in a younger crowd and a larger crowd. And I think at some point before your tenure, we decided we weren't going to do any more EDM concerts, but I'm wondering, where are we with that? Because I do get that question
So
a
I
lot.
think that message that there was a reluctance to have those shows kind of filtered out to the community of promoters at large, and we've tried to turn that back around. So we are currently pursuing some urban hip-hop and EDM concerts. In fact, Lindsay Sterling, if you're not familiar with her, she is a classical violinist who does EDM music. So you will be very intrigued to maybe look at a video of hers and see what kind of music she will be performing. It's going to be a very great show with her new, it's a Christmas album that she released last year and has updated for this year's season. I think it'll be a great show.
Alderwoman Burgess and then Millawamboy.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could remind us, in terms of FY19, what your projections are in terms of profit or loss for
So
the
we were
facility.
projected to lose approximately $495,000 in fiscal year 19.
Okay. So a question I've asked often, and we're still looking for an answer, and some of that is because you're newer to this, is what are reasonable expectations for this facility in terms of profit and loss, so we can grapple with what that means?
Sure. So I think, and I've discussed this with the finance department here as well, I think that range of approximately $500,000 is going to be an average. I think that's probably where this building will fall. Even at its most successful, it'll still probably come in at somewhat of a loss. I know that's not great news to hear, but there is a very large arena that brings in people from all over the region. In fact, some of the events that we're seeking this year and next year and even into 2020 are regional sporting events that will last many, sometimes up to a week-long event, so that there will be ancillary revenue that will be spent in Bloomington at the hotels and restaurants. The economic impact of having those longer-term events or even a weekend event, which we've been doing more recently with just the youth sports teams, the youth hockey teams, have been looking to book and have booked both with us last year and this upcoming year, 2- and 3-day tournaments that they will be bringing in regional teams, and the families will all come and stay in Bloomington.
I think you raised an interesting point there, which is that different events have a different level of economic impact to the community. Will there be some consideration as you are booking events to try to find those that will have a longer-term impact, such as the sporting events, where people are not just coming for an evening, but perhaps staying for a weekend and eating at our restaurants and staying at our hotels and things like that?
Yes, and I think if you see in the report, you'll notice our Ticketmaster report for those events that are not just the local sporting events shows that we do draw quite a bit of interest from outside the local market. We do sell tickets to over 50% of our fans that come to those shows outside of McLean County. So those who come from an hour and a half away to come to those events generally will come early and stay longer and perhaps stay overnight. We did the Beer and Bacon Festival last year, and that, you're going to have people coming and having some alcohol and then staying overnight. So we know when those tickets sold from further away that we were anticipating that those tickets were probably people who were going to come and stay longer.
Alderman Millawamboy.
Okay, thank you. So, Lynn, I usually try to avoid, how would you say, micromanaging, what people do, but given the kinds of questions that I see people asking about some of the shows, so I at this point I've yet to understand what Venue Works feels is the niche, for this market. And I'd like to be able to understand, because I've seen some shows like Kenny Rogers, great guy, but I wouldn't have brought him here. He's really nice, great career, but I could tell from the get-go, I was like, this is not going to work out, So I'm wondering, how those sort of decisions are made. The way I personally see this venue, oftentimes, at least in my experience working with speakers and things like that, and I realize arenas are a little bit different and performers, but the best value for your money is the up and comer because they haven't been fully discovered yet. They're considered exciting, but yet they're not going to charge you a premium for their appearance. So I wanted to get some of your thoughts on that, and and where we're going in the future.
Sure. So every event that we book, we do what we call a risk assessment. We look at the performer, and what they have posted as results in their most recent concerts. So we take a look at their shows in markets similar to ours. We look at any of their shows that they've done previously. We look at what their costs are. Are they coming in with a huge stage show? Is it going to cost us a lot on the on the front end for stagehands to come and load their show in and take it back out? Some shows come in with 8 or 10 truckloads of equipment. Some shows come in with 1 or 2. So those expenses are always built into that equation when we're looking at whether or not we think this show will make money. Then when you add the number of tickets you expect to sell based on past performance, and you look at the show itself, Kenny Rogers was doing a farewell tour. There's one chance at that. Unfortunately, you hear sometimes that those farewell tours happen more than once, but in general they don't, and he was doing a farewell. He didn't fare well, but he was doing a holiday show. We were looking for something that would bring in some of the holiday spirit to the arena, and we thought maybe we could get him on his last leg of his tour. On the other hand, like you said, there's some up-and-comers that are going to be doing, shows, and you have to take a shot at them not knowing a lot of their past performance history. They maybe have been an opening act for another performer, and you kind of have to guess at how many of those tickets were sold simply because it was their show and not just the main performer. Kane Brown is a perfect example of someone who's been on the road with other acts, and now he's on his own tour, and we're taking a chance on him February 28th.
Alderman Black, and then Matthew.
Thank you, and thank you, Lynn. I got to say, obviously, no one here is thrilled about the numbers, being what they are.
No, we're not either.
Yeah, and what I'm liking about this conversation, though, is that I'm getting a consensus around the dais here about a couple things, and I'm mostly here just to echo a few things. One of the pieces that always troubles me about this conversation is that it's a very scary number, minus 400,000, 500,000, but that's taking only one look at the economic impact of the building. And the CVB is here. We talk about heads and beds and all the different things that go along with it. And getting that cost is difficult to maintain, but I can tell you, having been to the Beer, Bacon, and Bourbon Festival, there was a line out the door and people were turned away. So anytime we can capitalize on those types of things, that's something that I think we would support. I guess my question is more for Tim. I've appreciated how you brought in Scott to talk about the city's finances. Perhaps we do these conversations more frequently so we get a better understanding of these numbers, because we get questions all the time throughout the community, and it always helps when we have a better understanding of what's going on. And it's easy to score cheap political points by being angry at the arena, but ultimately we all want to see it be successful, because it doesn't help us to be going after our major expense in our community. So I want to see it be successful. I want to help in that endeavor, and maybe one way that could be is to get more frequent updates so I can pass along the message. I know Mayor Renner would love to be in a dunk tank, or whatever it would be to get
Maybe we could do that at Bacon and Beer Festival and make it a really big
body slam during WWE SmackDown. I don't know. He'll do it. So if that's what it takes, we're on board.
Amen. Okay. Let's see, Alderman Matthey, and then Burgess. Thank you. Lynn, thanks for the honesty. I think that you're the first person to ever present that said that the realistic projection is that this building is not going to break even. And I think that it's, that's not coming as a surprise to anybody. But now if we have an honest piece of information, we can use that to make educated decisions based on that. So I appreciate that. And Tim, I do agree that Gary made a good point during public comment that I would like to see all the numbers compiled at a single time, as well as probably it would be good to see projections for future repairs that we know are coming up as well. Again, information makes educated decisions, right? One thing, though, you said earlier is you said that the number of events that we had this year was very similar to the previous year. We just had lower attendance. It sticks in my mind that last year the number one concern that everybody was saying is, what are we going to do to have more events? Because last year we were saying we weren't happy with the number of events, and then we went through another entire cycle where we had the same number of events. So if we weren't happy last year, I'm assuming that makes us not happy with the number of events this last year too.
Yeah, I'm with you. We are not happy either, and we have been knocking on the doors. And unfortunately, right after we took over the arena here, Champaign opened the new arena in Champaign-Urbana. Their new basketball arena is about 4,000 seats more than we can hold, and they've got all the amenities that we've got. And so that added another piece to the market that we didn't have information on when we first got started. I certainly don't know what the discussion was at that time, but I do know Peoria has always been a player in this market. We've always known that that was going to be a potential target for us. But knowing that now we're basically splitting most of the shows that are coming through this Midwestern area into thirds instead of into two, it's become a lot more challenging.
Okay. I mean, one of the things we talked about last year was what kind of partnerships that we could have between the arena, the BCPA, and even the Castle Theater and the connections that Rory might have over there. I mean, how has that partnership, is there anything
I
there?
think we certainly have given each other leads, and I know that the BCPA booked a show, a VenueWorks show, in fact, because we had the ability to send a lead over that direction, and they were able to book a holiday show through VenueWorks Theatricals. So we are on the phone talking back and forth. Anne Marie and I are always talking to each other about what we're booking, what they're booking. Whenever something comes to us that might not be big enough, that they're looking for something to be cut down, and we're looking for a place to be able to move that show, they're always our first call because we'd like it to stay in town if we can. Castle Theater, that's the same thing. They're looking at those shows that are growing and anything that they grow to the point where we would be able to seat. I think really 2,500 seats is about the smallest that we'd like to be able to book because the cost of having the stagehands and all of the ancillary stuff that you need to have a really good event is more expensive than it would be at the Castle Theater. So we're always in communication with each other and trying to help each other out.
Do we have a better forecast for number of events and things looking for the next year? I mean, obviously you've shown us that you've got 4 things already signed up, but where are you doing a Bacon Beer Fest again? Do we have, does the forecast for this season, right? Because the winter time is the biggest part.
Sure.
Is it looking good?
I think it's looking good. I think it's looking way better than it did this time last year, and I think that we're finally gaining the traction that we needed to be able to roll those weekends into full event weekends.
Okay. And then the last question I had is I was just curious. I know that with the breaker boards last year, and then we've had some how are the relationships going with the Flying Aces and the Bloomington Edge? What does that look like in terms of how you're interacting together?
I think the relationships are being much better. I think our relationship with both the hockey team and the football team has been great this year. I think that they're very excited and very happy to have the upgrades that they were able to get for the arena themselves. The football team, moved their games to the summer where they played, their 6-game season during the summer months. And hopefully we'll get them back under contract and working ahead towards their spring season.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. I do see a number of people. I think probably 5 minutes was an unrealistic discussion time. Could I have a quick motion to extend this for another 15 minutes? Moved by Alderman Black. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Howman. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Matthey,
Yes.
Alderman Sage,
Yes.
Alderman Malumoway,
Yes.
Alderman Burgess,
Yes.
Alderman Painter,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt, Alderman Black,
Yes.
Alderman Hallman, and Alderman Bray.
Okay, right. And in the order that I saw them, Alderwoman Burgess, Painter, and then Alderman Sage.
Thank you. This is similar to some of the things that Alderman Matthey just said, but we're looking at a portion of the Coliseum's overall economic impact on our community at this moment in terms of costs. I'll just focus on costs for a moment. And the one area we're not talking about yet is capital improvements.
Mhm.
We know it's an aging facility, and I assume that there will be investments on the horizon. I think it would be nice as a council to get a handle on what those might look like. Over time so we can make decisions because what we're hearing is, this is an investment and we should expect some sort of rate of return on our investments, which can be measured in a lot of different ways. Profit and loss is only one of those ways. Economic impact is a very significant way to measure that, but I think we need to be able to look at that and say, here are our financial liabilities, here are the benefits we'll get, and make informed decisions based on that, because we haven't been able to do that. And so I appreciate you being very frank with us this evening about the financial realities of both the profit loss and the economic impact, so we can start looking at this and saying, is this the best investment of our city's resources over time? Because we have a debt service going through, I think it was 2035, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be able to make the best decisions going forward based on all of that information. So thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Painter.
Thank you, Lynn, for this very thorough report. I just have to ask, though,
Tell me a little bit about Hairball. That's a very interesting name for
So,
celebration.
thanks for asking. I appreciate the opportunity to share what is going to probably be one of the funnest events that we'll do this winter. Hairball is a cover band, and they cover the hair bands from the 80s and 90s. So
Okay.
all of the, Poison and Led Zeppelin, and they have two lead singers. The band stays on stage the entire time. The lead singers alternate, and they perform the personas of all of the lead singers of these bands. So we're expecting quite a few costumes and extravagant outfits for New Year's Eve bash at the arena.
Okay, thank you. I was envisioning a cat kind of thing.
Well, who knows? Al- Alderman Sage.
Thank you. And Lynn, also thanks for the report. I guess initially after hearing comments from Jamie and Scott, it sounds like a bacon and beer festival would, a monthly event there would probably work out. So maybe you can look for some gaps in the, in their, just,
Maybe we'll do something like tacos and tequila just to mix it up.
yeah, have images of Scott and Jamie camped out over there the night before to get tickets. So, and just a couple things that Jamie said, because I think, you raised a couple good points, Jamie. One of them was that I know when VenueWorks came in, we had a very frank and candid conversation, and, a couple years ago, whenever that happened, that there would be losses, and there would be significant six-figure losses each year. Now, the number I recall was something probably in the range of $300,000 a year. So again, I just share that from kind of a continuity perspective, is it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody on the council that was here when VenueWorks took over, because those were clearly announced and clearly shared. And the other thing, and Jamie, I know I've thought the same thing through the years, that is the number of events. I've seen this cycle go through a couple times where we said we'd like to see events over there all the time. We want to see the place lit up every night because, people drive by and it's dark and it's losing money. And at least what I observed during that time was that rarely led to profitability, because by the time you figured in the overhead and staff cost and everything else for a number of events that may or may not generate, appropriate revenue, and then I've seen it then set dark for what seems like an extended period of time too. And I've heard all kinds of reasons it's dark during the summer because all the bands are out on tour, doing state fairs and all that other kind of stuff. And so what I've concluded is I don't know what that magic number of events is. I honestly don't. And I still feel like that I sit here just hoping that we'll find that right balance of events to cover, revenue versus cost, but I sure don't know what that is. So again, I appreciate what you're trying to do over there. It's a difficult task.
I think one of the things that kind of gets lost in the shuffle because it's not something that's ticketed is all of the event nights that we have with the local community youth leagues and the adult hockey leagues. We're busy at the arena practically every single night from September through April. And although the outside lights might not be on and we might not be letting people in through the doors, there are certainly people utilizing that facility. And for the benefit of the community, I think it's important to know that they wouldn't be able to do that. They'd be traveling to Peoria or to Champaign or to Danville to get that ice time that they wouldn't have been able to get here. So I think that even though it may not be publicly seen, that there is certainly a lot of activity going on over at the arena all the time.
Alderwoman Bray.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Lynn. Like others they've mentioned, I just want to thank you for your approach. I appreciate the approach that you take to the arena and your focus on solutions. And I shared with you privately, but I'd like to share publicly that I've heard just so many positive remarks about this year's Back to School Alliance Backpack Giveaway event. And I think that they just blew away the numbers this year.
It was a really great event.
Thousands and thousands of families attended that event, and just great accommodations provided by your group. So I appreciated that you included a page here on community involvement, and so some of my questions will kind of circle around that. And you just talked about dark days. We've talked a little bit about that, and that after April, we have more dark days than perhaps at other times. So could you just refresh us or talk us through how dark days are handled? So let's say come May, how does the community know when there's a dark day, or if there's an opportunity for them to possibly reach out and schedule something on a dark day? And then finally, some threshold costs about dark days and how that works.
So we did something different last year. Normally, once the hockey team finishes their season, and hopefully that's an extended playoff run, but sometime in April they generally finish their season, and then we would take the ice out, because the cost of keeping ice in with the refrigeration and the ice plant running all of the time is expensive. It's not a cheap thing to do. We wouldn't be able to fill it with, the hockey teams take a break as well. Even the travel teams take the summer off so the kids could play baseball, I am guessing. So those teams aren't necessarily looking for ice time in the summer the same way that they do during the regular season. So with the ice out, the ice events are certainly not available to have. We are looking as best we can for other events. So for example, the Jehovah's Witness Convention. That is 2 full weekends every June, sometimes late May or early July, depending on where it falls into the calendar, of multiple groups of people coming into the community for that event. Last summer, the hockey team themselves decided to hold their tryout camp here in Bloomington. So they brought people in from all over the country, even from Europe, to this town to try out for their team. And there were 150 kids that came with their families. A lot of them brought extended family. And they came for a 5-day training camp and tryout camp at the arena. So we did keep the ice in longer last spring, and we did rent it out to the community groups, and we communicated that through the normal channels that we have with all of the youth hockey leagues. And we told them, if the team commits to doing that again this spring, that we would get them further notice and hopefully be able to do some travel tournaments during that late springtime when we have additional ice time available for them.
And is there a calendar posted of dark days? So say, for instance, I wanted to run a basketball camp there this summer, and I wanted to bring in groups. How would I find out?
So we just
available
updated our
dates?
website recently, and right now we are trying to determine how to get non-ticketed events. Right now our calendar is driven by our ticketing system. It populates so that you can link to, if you click on the event on the calendar, it clicks you right through to buy tickets. So what we're looking to do is to be able to put non-ticketed events on there, so at one glance you can look at a calendar page and see, in the month of June, these ticketed events are happening with a link that you can click on, and all of these other events are happening, which means that the arena is simply booked. Other than that, just give us a call and we'll be happy to tell you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Alderman
Yeah,
Maloney.
just a quick question. Can you update us on the status of basketball at the arena?
Basketball is currently seeking some dates from us. I just got an email from the basketball team, the basketball league ownership, last week, and we sent them all of our available dates from December through next May. So hopefully we'll get that news out soon.
Alderman Massey.
I forgot to ask one question. A resident asked me this morning how they get information to you about the types of acts they would like to see, that they would buy tickets to come see. So how do they get that information to you?
On our
Or do you solicit that somehow? Or?
Sure. I mean, we on our website, all of our email addresses are listed. I will certainly take that information, and we would love to know. I would always love to hear from our residents and people who are interested in having events here. The more information we have, the better off we'll serve the people here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that has been alluded to by several aldermen up here is that we're not including direct in terms of hard numbers is the economic impact upon the community. And I know there's a little bit of tracking on the Convention Visitors Bureau, but it's even more than that. So we're looking at, in a sense, cost and benefits on a ledger, but there's another ledger that we're not really, we don't have a good handle on.
Sure.
And I would like to talk to the chamber and some others, and maybe perhaps the econ department at IWISU, see if we could find some better measures of the economic impact upon our community. And I've seen lots of numbers thrown around, but I'm talking about numbers that are hard numbers. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so the one question I have, though, is with respect to combined ticketing. There's been some discussion in the past. Is there any possibility of combined ticketing with the BCPA?
We have not discussed that. You mean like putting a series of events together?
Either that or doing it together and not having different employees doing that.
I'm not sure that we've done that because our ticketing system.
No, we haven't done it. It's just in terms of possibilities of duplication.
I'm not sure I understand your question. I'm going to ask you.
Rather than having your staff booking
Mhm.
and city staff booking at the BCPA and the Coliseum, a centralized booking system.
Okay. I mean, we did discuss that earlier this year when we were discussing, managing the BCPA. As far as the,
I realize there's some differences, and it wouldn't be...
it also has some efficiencies, so it's certainly not something that we wouldn't be willing to talk about.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anything else? Thank you very much. Appreciate the information. Next, we move to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just an update on upcoming agenda items. September 24th, the next council meeting, we'll have an agenda item for administrative court ordinances. It will address chronic offenders, will come before council. Then on October 1st, there's going to be a work session. This is not a council meeting, but there's going to be a work session to discuss proposed zoning amendments. And this is led by the Community Development Department, and it's going to kick off a timeline of events that department's been working on for about 3 years regarding some of our zoning amendments. Going to be quite a few public discussions, but this will be the kickoff on October 1st. October 8th, the council meeting will be 3 items that we have on the docket for now. Business registration ordinance that'll come forward by the Community Development Department and others. And then also on that topic, the story is on the IT side, the ability to sign up, register through an app, and also make payment. And that will lend itself to other areas of, service within the city as well for residents. Item number 2, fee ordinance. This is something community development's also been working on for quite some time. And then lastly, Lake Bloomington dock ordinance. Legal department, several other groups have been working on that, and we're going to bring that in front of council on October 8th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions of our city manager? Okay.
So we're having a meeting the first Monday in October. So are we looking now at having special or work sessions on the first Monday rather than extending a meeting on the second, third, or fourth Monday?
No, not at all. This is somewhat unique on this zoning task that staff have been working on for over 3 years. I believe it's representatives from the firm that was hired to assist, Hazio Levine. That's when they're going to come down and have this public meeting. So it's not a special meeting, no action required by the council, but just open this up for a very public discussion about some of the proposed changes.
Okay. At this point, we move on to, wow, I think these are all Alderman Blacks, and we have up to 3 minutes to summarize the initiative, and then a 5-minute council discussion on each to see if the question is really maybe even questioning, in this case, Alderman Black, bringing these about the initiative. Do we want to pursue it? Do we want to have staff to do any more work on it? It doesn't mean that it would necessarily appear on an agenda, but is there continued interest in having us go forward with any of these items? Fair? So the first one is direct city manager to explore how downtown projects are funded in comparable communities. I'll turn it over to Alderman Black for 3 minutes and then a discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to take a moment to thank Tim for all of the work that he's done helping me along this process. This is my first time doing an Alderman request form under our new way of going about it. And it's been very smooth thanks to you, and I've worked with Nora as well, and countless emails and meetings, so I appreciate your time. And thank you for allowing me to blow up our council agenda this evening. My goal tonight is just to kind of get get feedback from the group. Many of these things Tim is already working on, and we've talked about that, but just to make sure that we're not wasting staff time, it's something the majority of the council isn't interested in moving forward on. And of course, we're not agreeing to any kind of detailed, fleshed out plan, but a lot of this is going to come back from staff if the majority of the council would like to, with some more details fleshed out based on the conversation here. So for the first one, directing the city manager to explore how downtown projects are funded in comparable communities. My thought process behind this is we've talked a lot about downtown ad nauseum from some perspectives. We've talked about how we fund specific projects downtown. There really is no clear answer on some of that, and other communities have been able to figure some of these questions out, and I'm not really looking for a very lengthy report. I'm looking more for staff to come back with, these are a few comparable communities that are about our size, demographics, whether it be colleges, businesses, whatever. Here's how they fund downtown-specific projects. So St. Joseph, Missouri comes to mind. How does Normal fund Uptown? Because we've talked about these projects like getting recycling bins and having somebody come power wash and a lot of things in the downtown task force report, but we need to have funding because we always know that funding is going to be a challenge. So to me, the piece of the equation that's missing is what can we do that's actionable for Bloomington? And so I would envision at some point staff would come back theoretically before the end of the year with here are some ways we can do it. Council, what's your appetite for any one of these ways? And we can decide at that point in time if we want to proceed or not, but at least we have a fact-based way of dealing with funding specific projects.
Okay. You're 40-some seconds under budget. So now we'll begin. Is there interest in pursuing this? We're going to start. May as well start with Alderman Sage and come from here, Sage, Millawamboy, and Burgess.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm interested yet, but a couple of follow-up questions, because it appears to me, right, I mean, there's just a couple generic ways to do this, right? You either reallocate existing dollars or you create new dollars. And those new dollars, I think, are things we've talked about in the past, clearly bond debt, additional debt for the city, a special service area, business development district, or a couple of other things that we've talked about for downtown. As I recall, preliminary conversations with the downtown group, they really weren't interested in taking on more fees and or taxes, even if the financing turned around and went right back into the district. So I guess I'm just trying to understand at a high level, given those things, what do we expect staff to bring back that's different than those things I've just mentioned?
Yeah. So in those conversations in the past, I think they were very high level and philosophical in nature. So I've heard liquor fees been talked about. I've heard gaming licenses been talked about. I've heard special service districts, but I haven't seen a very clear, like, this is what the ordinance would look like should we proceed. At the end of the day, we've all talked a lot about doing these projects and some interest in it, and I'm interested in talking about new revenue because we're not getting it from what we currently have. And if we're not serious about creating some new revenue stream, some of these projects are going to have to go by the wayside. And in my best case scenario from here, downtown projects would pay for themselves through these downtown fees. So for instance, we can talk about putting a tax on, alcohol in downtown. Whatever that number is, 10 cents, 5 cents, whatever, that revenue raised would go directly into funds that we can use for projects specific for downtown. So somebody who's upset about, I don't want to pay an extra 10 cents for a beer, that's fine. You have many choices to choose from. But don't tell me that the students are going to stop coming because their Bud Light costs an extra few cents or whatever. We talk at a very high level in the past about these sorts of things, and I have not seen the nuance. This is what it would look like. This is the impact that it would be. And here's why other communities have gone down these routes. And that is the piece that I think has been missing. We're going to get people that are going to be in opposition to it no matter what. I don't think anything up here is going to be non-controversial. But I didn't run for public office and sit on the sidelines and wait for something to happen. I've sat here for a half decade and watched these projects been talked about and talked about and talked about with no funding stream, and this is a way to do it.
So I think you just took a couple things off the table that I just mentioned, and I want to be sure. You talked about revenue coming directly from the downtown district itself. The form we don't know yet, but you're not talking about reallocating existing budget dollars, and you're not talking about the city simply assuming more bond debt to cover downtown. You're primarily focused at this point by the downtown, whatever shape those new taxes or fees take would generate downtown projects. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Scott.
Alderman Wamboy.
Okay, thank you. And Scott said that he's been here for half a decade. That doesn't sound very nice. Been here a couple of years longer than
Half
you.
his lifetime.
Right. Scary. So I'm asking a couple questions just for clarification. So you said that Tim has been working on a couple of those things. So I wanted to be able to understand what those things he's been working on are. And also, I know the staff was working on, some of the downtown initiatives, and so I just kind of want to flesh this out and figure out what's what. What are we exactly going after, and if this process is going to lead to some clarification, because I know we asked the staff to work on some low-hanging fruit and then possibly other things, but I'm just not clear as to where we will be going with this.
Great questions. And I'll, not this project specifically, but other ones in the six that are brought up tonight, Tim has been working on, and we'll talk about those when we get to them. But for this one specifically, I know we had asked staff to work on some low-hanging fruit. I left a couple of those conversations feeling a little bit ambiguous. One of my goals this evening is to provide staff the clear direction from this council that these sorts of fees targeted towards downtown are not off the table, that we are very interested in getting clear information about what this looks like with a proposal that would be fit to Bloomington. I feel as though if we don't do that, we could be looking at a couple of, maybe we'll have some people come by and, power wash every so often, but these solutions need to have a funding stream that pays for these sorts of projects, and that's the piece that I think is critical here.
Alderwoman Burgess.
Coming into today, I wasn't entirely sure what the purpose of this was. Unfortunately, I'm getting more confused as time goes on. So maybe you can help me out here because, this proposal is written as just generally tell us how other communities do it, but now you're narrowing it down to only specific types of funding streams that would be looked at. And I'm just, but so that I'm not entirely sure what it is we would be doing if we said, yeah, let's go ahead with this. But let me tell you my bigger concern, which is not the specifics of this. My bigger concern is we can ask staff to give us a generic report on how other communities do things, to give us, an education on downtown development and downtown revitalization, or we can have staff look at the various reports that we've adopted and recommendations that are already out there and bring us actionable items as necessary. And to me, the latter course of action is one that is more likely to get things done in the downtown area, which is really what we're missing right now. And the sense of frustration I feel underlying this is a lack of progress in the downtown area and how do we get there. Because I think inherent in whatever staff does or brings to us, they're going to have to also bring to us suggestions on how do we pay for it. Is it a reallocation of funds? Is it typical in this particular scenario to use, a special service district? Might be appropriate here, maybe it's not appropriate there. So I think I would rather personally say instead of asking for more of a bigger picture item that talks about just in the abstract ways of funding things, we say to staff, hey, downtown is still really important to us. We want to see things get done there. Bring us actionable items, and I think we'll all be happier with the results of that.
I wasn't looking to get bogged down in specifics because I wanted to defer to staff on some of those other ones, but I'm sure you've had conversations with people that have been like, well, have you looked at so-and-so city and how they've done this? And you're right, we've done report after report, task force, and you did a great job of chairing that organization. I'm fine with however that comes back to us. I just need to see the specifics and not a high-level conversation about what it would look like. I want to see this is what this community has done that has worked. We may have adopted it here. We need to implement it. Any one of those things to me is success after this conversation.
Just not. I still am not sure that I understand because what does it matter how other communities have done things? I mean, we can use those for ideas, but we're not struggling for lack of ideas. We're struggling for lack of progress. And so my question is, how do we make sure we get that? Because I feel like staff is already bringing us down the road of progress. I don't want to give them another project that detracts from that. And maybe I'm just failing to see the point here. Maybe this does lead to progress, but I'm missing it, unfortunately.
Sure. I guess my goal was to be as broad as possible so as to get something done on this front. And really, I guess Alderman Sage kind of got me to say it, in that I'm looking to have fees or taxes newly created for the downtown to fund downtown projects. Whether those ideas come from current reports that have already passed, comparable communities. I know Tim and I have talked about this. Whatever that would look like, I would like to see a menu of options in actual, this is what it would be, as opposed to me saying 10 cents on a beer. This is what it would be. Here's would be the impact. This is the amount of money it would raise. And I think that would help foster our conversation about what projects could or could not be done. So the source of where the ideas come from is less relevant to me as the fact that at the end of the day, we can see comparable communities, past studies that have been done, because we have to have some conclusion to these conversations.
Okay. Actually, at this point, we are 100% over time, budget in our 5-minute discussion per initiative. Is there a motion to extend this by, since I saw several, 10 minutes?
So moved.
Excuse me, moved by Alderwoman Bray, and is there a
Second.
second by Alderwoman Miller-Wambach?
10 minutes by times 6, because there's 6 more, I think, right?
Yeah, well, I'm going to hold this to 10 minutes, and then I'll have us do another one, because we've got 6 items total. So, Alderwoman, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Alderman Mathey,
Yes.
Alderman Sage,
Yes.
Alderman Malamoy,
Yes.
Alderman Burgess,
Yes.
Alderman Painter,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Black,
Yes.
Alderman Hallman,
Yes.
Alderman Bray.
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's see. Alderwoman Schmidt, if I certainly saw yes first, and then Alderwoman Bray.
First of all, just a little bit of historical perspective, because I've been here for more than half of a decade. We did do quite a thorough study, maybe a decade ago, on Special Services District, Business Improvement District, that got quite far along in being fleshed out, and I can assure you that the reaction was swift and clear. But should we decide to go down this road, there is some framework to build onto. And I also, I want to support what Alderman Burgess is saying. I actually think that we do have plans, and some of them are tier 1 plans, and they're not going to cost a lot of money, but they may move us along. And they get more and more expensive. Some things may very easily get rolled into next year's budget, and they can happen. So I could see using that as the starting point to begin to talk about, boy, when we get to a tier 3 thing, we better have a better plan for how we fund it. So I think your approach folds both of those things together.
Alderwoman Bray.
So my thoughts were along that line, that maybe we can solve the problem of this broad brush approach by identifying what are the items that are prioritized, and then tasking staff to say, okay, how will we fund these? And so maybe they can specifically study those things that we've identified as yes, these are projects that we'd like to do, and so what is the best way to fund those? And instead of having them just search all different kinds of projects and figure out funding streams.
Alderman Black, excuse me.
Again, success for me, if it doesn't come in the form of approving this Alderman request form as presented, success comes from me, and if we can tell staff clearly that we are interested in some sort of revenue generator to fund these projects. We've tried to prioritize some things, and I'm not sure that's been done, and we've seen a couple different ways of doing it that some have been confusing and some have been successful. I just want to give staff the political, cover, or the political willpower from this group that we are interested in all these things on the table. And if the group decides that we don't want to look at new fees and new taxes for downtown, then I think that takes them a lot of those things that are our priorities off of the table entirely.
Alderman Sage and Matthey.
Thank you. So again, kind of echo some other things. I mean, I think Amelia makes a good point, right? I mean, I think we've already done some prioritization of downtown projects, and I'm not sure where where we're at with that. But I recall, I know providing some input on a spreadsheet and sending that back. So I mean, I think we already have some prioritization in place. To me, Scott, it comes back to I think the point you've raised, and that is simply where are the tax dollars going to come from to pay for that, right? And you know, all roads lead back there from where I sit, and I mean, while it's clarifying for me to realize that, you know, like I said earlier, we took some other things off the table, and we're talking about something from within the downtown district, financing the downtown. That's the principle you kind of have laid out. But again, as Karen said, I mean, I think I can, you know, estimate pretty clearly what the response is going to be from the downtown stakeholders on that. So given that, then it comes back into the other conversation that we seem to have, and that is how do we prioritize the larger pool of existing tax money across a multitude of needs. So I mean, I guess I, just at a high level, it would probably be a little bit difficult for me to support, you know, something else for small businesses in downtown Bloomington to finance this. But yet I'm willing to be part of a larger, again, not the first time I've said it, a larger prioritization conversation about how we allocate existing money across different needs.
Alderman Massey.
I think I was going to say much the same thing, is that I think that we've already started down the path of prioritization, and everything keeps coming to a screeching halt as soon as somebody says, but how much does that cost? And everything, so every time we take one step forward, we get kicked back 3/4 of the step because how much does that cost? How much does that cost? And everything stops right there. And Scott, I guess the way that I read this is that you're trying to say, okay, well, we know there's a cost to it, but this is how we're going to pay for it. And you want to explore some ideas around what that looks like in terms of how things get paid for. And I think that that's perfectly fair. I was part of that task force for the special services area 10 years ago, which is frightening that it was 10 years ago. And I think there's more gray now, dude. Yeah, but so it was, but I think that part of that was there was the way that it was presented actually made a huge impact 10 years ago as well. It did not get presented to the best that it could have been. A lot of things are in presentation, so for coupling different options and fees and putting things together into a package that could bring to a greater whole that could say, if we do this, 2 cents a beer, whatever it might be, I don't know. Then we have a pool of money that says we can knock all these tier 1 things off the list in 3 years. If we do this, we can knock the tier 1 things and maybe we can start in the tier 2 things in 5 years. And so we can put an actual expectation based on the prioritization we already got from community development, as well as maybe a timetable to start actually taking action, the same thing. So I would be supportive of staff spending a little time to look at what those different models might be. I think it's the best of both worlds. Take the prioritization that we already did and then put some numbers together to how we fund things based on different timetables and different tiers. So thanks.
Okay. Alderman Howman and then Burgess, and we may need to cut bait on this.
We can't increase taxes and fees to find ourselves in a healthy financial picture. We need to grow our economy. And my challenge would be to the folks that are going to IML. I don't think anybody's going to NLC, but the folks that are going to IML, talk to the people there, or go to some of the sessions that are talking about how other cities are funding their development.
Okay. Alderwoman Burgess and then Millawamboy. Alderman Millawamboy.
Thank you. So I think that my concern after today's conversation is that this, if we move forward on this, what I would not want to see is creating the impression that anything we want to do in downtown can only happen if we create new revenue. And if that's not an underlying premise here, then okay, I'm all for exploring options and talking about what those look like. I think everything should be on the table, but I do not think I could support a proposal that says we're only going to fund things if we increase taxes or have a special service district. So Scott, if you could clarify which direction that's going in, that would be very helpful for me.
Yeah, to your question, I'm just thinking I should have gone to law school. I would have been better at writing these. Yeah, I'm not looking to just say that everything that's paid for downtown comes from this fund. I'm just saying that we need to have a pool of money to fund these downtown projects. And some of these tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 long-term goals are going to require some investment from the city. And given our current financial situation, there's not going to be any more dollars coming out of any fund that we currently have to fund any future downtown projects. It's important to me that a lot of the things that are downtown focused are paid through the fruits that will come from these downtown investments. And whether it be, again, comparable communities, our own work that's been done, which has been fantastic, we got to stop having these high-level conversations about what we're looking for and actually talk about a specific proposal. So when Jamie says 2 cents a beer or 5 cents a beer, what is the actual number? And I like the way that you'd put it out there we do this, it'll fund this many projects. If we do that, it'll fund this many projects in this many years. And again, success is giving staff the clear direction from this conversation on what we're looking for.
Alderman Lalonde.
Yeah, personally, I'm a little hesitant to do that because I feel like it would be premature to go in this particular direction. I would rather have the staff come back to us with specific projects and say, here is how I think, here's how we think as staff, this can be funded. But right now, to just give them that broad directive would feel a little bit premature for me, especially because, I'm all about benchmarking and looking at other communities, but the communities are still different, and people here will react differently. So I don't know, if they see a project, people see the value of a project here locally, they might say, yeah, sure, let's go for it. They might react totally differently. So I think it's a little premature at this time for me. I'd rather wait.
Okay. So just to summarize, you're thinking of something that's macro level, not necessarily project specific, as a funding mechanism that is generated from economic activity downtown.
Yes.
And are we asking staff, staff already has direction to do some of the prioritization, examine some low-lying fruit, bring other projects back to us about downtown. It's one of our top goals, but it doesn't seem, if I'm reading this right, I think I heard a few voices that were in support, but I didn't hear a majority to continue on this. Okay, we can very quickly, since we're out of time. In fact, now I'm just asking yes, no. Should we advocate more staff time to this particular proposal?
Well, I like the idea of let's start with what are the ideas that we've prioritized? What are the items that we've selected for prioritization, and then asking staff to say, then do that deep dive.
Right.
Would that work? Kind of like a 1-2 punch there. So
Okay.
kind of aligning with Alderman Malamambe.
Okay.
No.
No. Yes.
No.
Maybe?
Maybe. Okay, we'll take maybe under these circumstances. Okay.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, probably not as presented.
Okay. Okay. So we had a couple of yeses. Essentially, we're not getting a yes on this. We move on then to potentially 3 and 5 minutes on the direct city manager to partner with ISU and IW students to redesign city documents. And I'll turn it over.
Yeah, this goes back, looking at our documents, and Tim and I have talked about this, there's some opportunity in our city services bill and others to really present better information and in a way to just kind of partner with our students here locally at Illinois Wesleyan and ISU. We don't have a consultant come in here and redesign everything. We can partner with the talent that's already here, give them an opportunity to learn more about city government, and then come back with a redesigned standard form that we could use that shows us as a modern, forward-thinking community that we are. And I know people are going to say, well, is this really a priority? there's never going to be a good time to have this conversation. I look at this as a good chance for us to work with students, help build their resume, and in exchange for that, we'll get a better looking document that provides good information to the public and provides a good face for us to the country.
Are there any specific documents just before?
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I've seen us use on memos the standard Microsoft Word template. I'm talking about council packets, the way that they look, the city services bills, really any document that the city touches. And I would defer to Tim and staff on comprehensive list on what would be prioritized. But the idea being that we would use our local talent to redesign and revamp those documents.
I didn't mean to preempt questions. I just wanted to clarify the specific situation. Questions or Alderman Sage?
Well, first of all, thanks, because what I think I hear you saying is perhaps this idea of branding our communication, which is always, I think there's some positives in that. I'm going to throw one more little sidebar on there. I've mentioned this a couple times now, and when we've had conversations with the downtown signage and some of those other and maybe this is happening. I don't think it is, because I think I probably would have heard about it. And that was to perhaps maybe use some interns or some students to develop a downtown app. To help to complement the signage and the ability to kind of navigate downtown. And it seems to me that there should be some folks somewhere in that student group that perhaps could help us get something up and running, recognizing that the first iteration wouldn't be the last iteration. But I'll just throw that out as perhaps a tag on or a bolt on to what you're suggesting.
Yeah, branding is the best way to put that.
Because again, I've asked about that a couple times, and I've gotten some nods at the podium, but I'm not sure anything's actually. And if we want to promote downtown, that seems to me to be a real natural way to do that.
Okay.
Agreed.
Alderwoman Schmittenbray.
I think I hear you say that we're talking about redesigning the layout of documents, ease of understanding what the point of the document is, and maybe reordering things and cutting things down and possibly even rethinking our web page or how people find things. Is that what you're talking about? And maybe modernizing them, or?
I guess I'm thinking more of, in my professional life, I know that every so often I get like a new, you got to use this form moving forward, and it looks a certain way as part of a branding is probably the best way to put it. Our city documents are the same. We use Times New Roman. We put a clipped out JPEG on our documents. I know that I've seen city memos come back that have been just the standard Word template for a memo. And this is not the message I want to be sending to others outside of our community, that we're just a standard copy and paste. We're going to get it done as quickly as possible. And we're fortunate to have a pool of students here that do this as part of their profession. And what better way to tap into those students without having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and having somebody come in and tell us this is what you should look like, really utilize that talent locally.
Alderwoman Bray.
So it just comes to mind that as we try to do some redesign, sometimes that is very data rich, and certain systems can't run certain kinds of data or logos or the like. So I think if we decide to do something like this, we have to have our IT folks very involved in making sure that they're not designing, a fantastic new system or a fantastic new set of documents and all kinds of links and the like, and then our system can't run it. So I don't know if we might want to have some preliminary discussions about the capability of the system before we launch it.
Yeah. I don't think that right now we're talking about launching. I think you're just asking for...
To direct the city manager, and he could work out the specifics.
I think what Alderwoman Bray is saying is along the way we might have a stumbling block.
Well, I mean, before you get students on board to start this project, we need to double check what is the capabilities of our system to run enhancements, because if we don't have enough muscle to run it, then they'll design something and spend a lot of time on it, and we won't be able to execute things.
Okay. Alderwoman Malonboy.
Alderman
Pardon me?
I thought I heard older woman.
Did I say older woman? Oh, bad mayor. Okay.
All right. See me after the meeting.
No, Milty.
So, so I think it would help for me to understand what those documents are. I didn't really get a sense, because initially I read documents, and then I'm hearing websites, and now there is technology involved. So and not meaning to get into the hows, but I'd like to get a sense of, really how much time is it going to take staff to do that? Because I know working with student interns, there's turnover, and I know these projects kind of have a way of, creeping into people's lives. And after a semester, a student gets off is no longer an intern, they move on, they have something else, and then you have another one who comes on and they have to take over some things and things like that. So I guess it will be helpful for me to get a sense of what are we talking about, what documents, how much time, what's the timeline, or maybe that's part of what the staff is supposed to do to kind of figure this stuff out. But
And to be clear, I'm only talking documents, not website. I know we just redid a website redesign. I'm not looking for a logo to be redone. I'm talking about the way our documents look.
because we got awards for the website, right?
Yeah, we did.
So let's not change that.
Touch it, yeah, don't touch
Right.
it.
Yeah, including transparency.
Right.
Okay. At this point, since we've got several people and we have been out of time, is there a motion to continue this, let's say, for another 5 minutes? I don't know that.
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Matthews. Is there a second? Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Matthey,
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Alderman Malamoy. Alderman Burgess. Alderman Painter. Alderman Schmidt. Alderman Black. Alderman Harmon.
Yes.
And Alderman Bray.
Okay. Alderwoman Howman, excuse me, and then Alderman,
Matthew was.
did I say Matthew first? I'm sorry. Alderman Matthey and Alderwoman Howman.
So I was just to say, I think this is actually a good idea. I always look at the beginning of all of our council packets and all those pages in there, and I wonder where, why, and how those showed up there. And and are those the appropriate things to put at the beginning of our packets anymore? I think some of them have been at the front of the packet for 10 years, and, I've asked Karen a couple of questions, like, where did this come from? And she's like, I don't even remember where it came from. And so I think that there's things we could, there's a lot of things we could do. I've had marketing departments from both IW and ISU reach out to me at various businesses to say, we need to do a senior project this year. Can we work with your business? So they are already doing this. They're already actively out in the community looking for projects. Things like a style guide are part of what you usually get for those, specifying fonts and styles and branding, letterheads and things of that nature. So I see this as being fairly minimal staff time to get a report back from the kids to say, here are some different ways that we can approach this. Here's some different things that we can look at. And as we're moving forward to a more digital engaged future, setting some of those stuff up right now, taking some of those baby steps now is a good way to move forward. And we've already got, because the next class that comes along to Mboka's point is one class gives us a style guide, the next class we say, we have this style guide and we need these documents revised into this style guide. And so, chunking it off into small pieces as we go along, but giving interns things that they can put in their portfolios is going to be a good idea.
Okay. Alderman Howman.
Thank you. I certainly would like to see a continuity in all of our documents and our PowerPoints and so forth, and a revamp of our water bill, because it's not a water bill, it's a city service bill. I don't think we need to direct our city manager to do this. I'm sorry. I think all we need to say is when we've got the time, please look at it. I'm sorry, doesn't deserve this amount of time.
Okay. Okay, so a very quick, if we are confining, as I understand, Alderman Black, to documents, can you give me just a heads up or down, or should we ask them to, in a sense, work with students at Illinois Wesleyan, Illinois State, and as Alderman Matthey noted, I was going to say, note that there are groups that are looking for projects, and if it's confined to documents, is there a appetite to go forward? I'll start with, no, okay, oh, no.
Yes.
To make it more complicated, I would say yes, but I very much would like to hear from the staff about how this would work from their perspective, because we haven't heard from them, because they're the ones who are going to implement it. And I don't know if this is going to be, too much time for them or not. I don't know, because interns, you have to kind of look after the work they're doing and monitor what they're doing, so.
Okay.
I think as it relates to documents, I think it's a good idea. I just think with again, a finite amount of staff time, I just think there's probably going to be other priorities that are more pressing.
Okay. Alderman Matthey. Okay. All right. We do have a majority to move forward with this. Again, with respect to documents. Okay. All right. Next.
I'm sorry, what was the majority?
To move ahead, I counted 5.
Okay, I'm not sure I counted 5, but.
Okay. You guys were no. Yes. 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 You were a yes.
I thought you were a no. Yes, but.
Yeah, Amelia was a yes.
Oh.
Amelia was a yes.
You were a no?
No, Johnny was a no. And then yes, yes. Yeah. And then
Okay.
and Jamie. So I'd counted 5, and then maybe some qualified yeses and nos. Okay. Qualified no. Okay. All right. Okay. And I think the understanding was, and I think by the author, that this would be a small amount of staff time, and perhaps might even begin to open possibilities for us to use Illinois Wesleyan, Illinois State University students on other projects too, if we begin to develop those relationships. But anyway, okay. We'll move on now to number 3, which is direct city manager to initiate eminent domain process on targeted downtown properties. You got the floor for 3 minutes.
That's really all I want to say at this point in time. We've talked about eminent domain a lot. We're not going to get into specifics at this time, but I want to give clear direction to our city manager that we are serious about eminent domain on strategic downtown properties.
And particularly those that might have held us hostage for many years?
I'm not saying anything.
Okay. Okay. Questions, or do I take a poll? Yes.
Yes.
Alderman Matthew. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry.
Well, first of all, real estate and property acquisition is something that is specifically allocated to do within closed sessions. And that's what this is. And so I will tell you that, I'm always willing to hear whatever the city manager might want to bring to us related, along those guidelines, but to endorse something at a high level and vague, and something related to private property rights in a public setting, I'm not in favor of that.
Okay. If I could just have a legal question on that. My understanding, this is a policy rather than an acquisition of a specific property. Mr. Boyle, is that accurate, inaccurate?
I think this is more a question of, are you going to be looking into it in the future rather than a discussion about a specific acquisition of property?
What is the outcome of the policy, Mayor? Acquisition of property.
But not necessarily a specific one. At least is that what you're...
I want to know what ones we're talking about, though, before I vote.
Mr. Boyle, do you want to clarify that for us?
Maybe it is something about initiating the process. Is that what you're getting at, Alderman Sage? Like actually going towards
Yeah, I am willing.
starting something rather than just looking into it?
Well, and I don't know. At some point it becomes tomato. To me, we talk about property acquisition in closed session, and what to do with property, and so with that backdrop, I'm not comfortable in initiating some public conversation at such a high level without understanding what the the impacts are going to be. If the city manager wants to have some conversations with us in one-on-ones or three-on-ones or something like that, I mean, I'm always interested in that. But a high-level kind of policy statement on eminent domain use for downtown properties, I'm not comfortable endorsing that publicly without understanding, what the impact of it is.
But just from a legal standpoint, Mr. Boyle?
From a legal standpoint, I would say that when we're talking about real estate acquisition, we're talking about a specific piece of, of real estate. In the same way that when we talk about personnel, generally we're speaking about either collective bargaining or a specific personnel issue. This sounds, and maybe Alderman Black can explain it, but it sounds like it's more like discussing a process rather than actually filing on a specific piece of real estate. Is that? I think Alderman Sage has some point if he's talking about specific pieces of real estate, but at this point it sounds like it's mostly a discussion about looking into something.
The initiative says targeted downtown properties. That sounds like more than a generic policy conversation.
I think...
I don't think it's specific enough to make it executive session, but I understand your concern.
Alderman Millawamwe.
Okay. So I have somewhat of a similar concern because I think this, again, is a little too broad. Because if I'm a property owner in the downtown, I'm asking myself, what does this mean? Do they mean me? What's the standard for determining that? So I really don't want to send shivers, up people's spine, for them to think that we're targeting their property when we may not be. So in the way that it's written, I think I wouldn't support that.
Alderwoman Howman.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with the targeted term in there, but I would also want to know how the targeted downtown properties fit into our overall strategic plan for downtown.
I think that part, again, we can ask staff to talk to us about that, but I think it's in our downtown plan, and it's in our, was talked about in the downtown task force, and it's in our comp plan to acquire,
We still don't have... Never.
Okay. Alderwoman Schmidt.
If this is asking us whether or not we would consider eminent domain on a property, which I don't know that this community has ever used eminent domain on a property. So if you're asking us, is this on the table or off the table, it would be on the table for me. But once we get to targeted downtown properties, I would think eminent domain is a tool in our toolkit that once we've exhausted everything else and we have a legal rationale for using that tool, then we should use it. So the way that this is worded is problematic to me, but maybe the underlying philosophy isn't.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah. And the reason, to your point, I don't know if there's another example of where the city of Bloomington has used eminent domain in this way, but because it is such a heavy staff involvement, because it has a large amount of repercussions that may go down the road, both financially and otherwise. I think it's important. We've all talked about it at some point, that we give clear direction to our city manager. If the majority of the council isn't interested in that, then that's off the table for us, and we should stop talk about something else.
No, right. Gotcha.
Okay. Okay. Given that summary, if I could have a quick yes or no, because we're once again out of time. I'm going to go from...
Yeah, but just want to clarify what I just heard, though.
Okay, of course.
I think that we just reshaped what the initiative is. That we're not speaking specifically about downtown properties. We're talking about a tool that we're willing to use for any property anywhere where we've exhausted everything else we can do and we need to make something happen.
We may be going down the tomato realm, but I would see it as whether it's downtown or wherever else, but I'm focused on downtown in this initiative itself.
Okay. So, Alderwoman Bray?
It's a tool in the toolbox.
Okay. Okay. And I think that's what's being asked.
I'm not clear what that means. Maybe it's the initiative as stated.
Well, I think the initiative was recharacterized as whether or not we had an appetite to identify an eminent domain as a tool in the toolbox to be used in our development. And or we will take the tool out and say, we won't use this remedy. And I'm saying, I think it's a tool in the toolbox, we'll leave it there, and then let's see what city staff comes back with in regards to some plans.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Alderwoman Talman? Well, I mean, at this point, we're going, you'll have your chance.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you. If it's seen as a tool, a process to use a tool, yes. If we're not taking it the way it is written.
Okay. Alderman Black?
I think a yes vote is telling the city manager that we are interested in this, and we are at a point with some properties strategically downtown that I don't want to name what they are, but we're telling the staff to come back with some process on eminent domain.
And you're saying as a tool?
Yeah, and maybe we
You're
decide
not, you're
yeah,
saying?
yes, as a tool, but what I would hope to see from this conversation, a yes vote will yield at some future executive session, because that would be legal and real estate, some plan from the city manager and staff about targeted downtown properties. And at that time, we're like, we don't want to go down this route, that's a different conversation, but...
Okay, okay. Are you okay with what he just said? Oh, okay, we've got a yes and I think so. We may come back to you depending on whether you're number 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to the use of eminent domain, but as Alderman Black stated it, I can't agree with it, no.
Okay. Alderwoman Burgess?
It is an economic development tool that I would be willing to use under the appropriate circumstances.
Okay. Alderman Milliwamway?
Yeah, and I guess this to me begs the question, when has it never been a tool? You know, so I don't know why we're trying to answer this question now. I mean, as far as I know, it's always been a tool. You know, we just haven't used it. So why are we? It's almost like trying to reaffirm something that's always been there. You know, but we've just never used it. So I don't think it's a good idea to make such a broad statement about it, because I think if I'm even a prospective property owner, I'm thinking, I don't know what they're up to. So I'm not interested in buying property there. So let's address specific properties as they come up. You know? And if at that point, if eminent domain is an option, then let's talk about it. But just to make it broad like that, not a good idea.
Alderman Sage?
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, precisely with some of those points. Eminent domain has always been an option available to us. I will tell you my recollection in my time on the council, it was discussed one time with the acquisition of some property related to the extension of Bunn Street through, to connect Bunn Street to Main Street, if you will. That was the only time that I think we ever talked about it as a council. And then it ended up that it did need to be used because we were able to acquire some needed property to do that. So again, this is at our disposal. It's, again, a tool in the toolbox. What is stated in the initiative with targeted downtown properties, I'm again, for many of the reasons that Mboka has said, I'm not in favor of that.
Alderman Matthey? Yes. Okay. All right. And we do have a majority, but I think even those that disagreed, I don't think disagreed that it's a tool in the toolbox.
That's right.
So this isn't really a resolution. This is just as staff is going forward. This is the appetite of the council.
There you
go. Alderman Black?
I'm talking so much tonight. Sorry about that. directing the city manager to update our economic development policy. I noticed that in the time that I've been here, we've talked about the economic development policy a lot. I'd like us to really be focused more on economic development engines and less on retail and those sorts of things. When we talk about it at a high level, I want to get that in writing so staff has clear direction from us.
Just to clarify that for the record, it's a 2011. I'm virtually certain it could have been 10, but I think it was 11 before I was mayor. That there was an economic development policy written by a previous council, previous mayor, previous city manager, and so you're suggesting updating.
Updating it with the specific focus, emphasis on economic engines, career jobs.
Okay. Alderman Sage.
So again, I'll need some clarification because the scope of economic development has always been kind of a multi-tier, and I'm going to give some, as Karen did here previously, some historical perspective. The Economic Development Council and/or /B in Advantage has been charged traditionally with creating those economic engines that you just mentioned, those more regional, if you will, economic development opportunities that create, I think, the kind of jobs that you're suggesting, Scott. I mean, whether they are manufacturing or technology, logistics, whatever those may be, is what I'm thinking you're understanding that you're saying. And that line of demarcation between the regional EDC effort and now be an advantage and the local municipality was we worked on the spot economic development that perhaps might not exactly parallel what you're saying. And so to me, so one of the questions I would have then is that, and maybe Tim will have to flesh this out, but is that still the line of demarcation or a division of labor, if you will, between EDC and Be an Advantage and what local municipalities are doing, whether it's the town or the city? And if it is, then what you're suggesting is that we're going to take on some of the work that the EDC and or Be an Advantage is currently charged with. That's the conclusion I've come to, and I'm asking: is that what we're suggesting here? And some of my assumptions could be not totally accurate in terms of saying where that division of labor is, but historically that's where it's been.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I hear you. My goal here is that as staff, really number one is updating the economic development policy to be more in line with where we are today with this current council. And then number two, I've known that in talking to the economic development coordinator, past and present, a lot of the metrics are focused on retail-specific targets. And I don't think that is not something that I'm willing to sign on to. Now, how that plays out with Be an Advantage and EDC, I think that's something that staff would sort out in part of an update, and where that demarcation line might be. But I don't see this to me as the start of a conversation with staff saying that we want to be more focused on some areas that aren't so retail heavy. Part of the feedback that I get from people is, I know you guys celebrate, another Empire Crossings, but that's just another few jobs here. We're not talking about the big engines that drive the community. If it means that the policy is that, part of our EDC, I don't want to get into specifics of what that policy would look like. I think that we're directing the city manager to review it with a special emphasis on economic engines.
Just to clarify, the EDC and the Be an Advantage have no authority. So the cities are the ones that have the authority in the county. So they are kind of like the UN. And they got to go back to go back to the nation states and get actual approval for them to actually do things.
Well, they may not have authority, but they get a lot of money from the city.
Yeah.
And if that money is, if it's incumbent on them to use that money to create economic drivers, then they have the authority to do some things.
Well, they don't have the authority to do anything that deals in an economic policy with giving any kind of tax breaks or incentives or whatever. They have to ask us for help. But anyway, we have continued questions. So let's see. We'll go back to Alderman Milwaukee.
I think no as far
I
as...
actually
Okay.
think Diana was.
Diana? Okay. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't, it can go from one end to the other, but regardless.
I don't see us getting involved in economic engines per se. We need to hold the EDC and be an advantage. We need to hold their feet to the fire for the money that I understand what you're saying, Mayor, but we're providing them with fair amount of money each year, and if we're not saying that we have the confidence in them to do it, then we need to pull that money back and hire our own EDC, our own economic development person that focuses on other than retail.
It doesn't mean they don't do anything. They don't have any, but there's the authority to
But they're not
attract
bringing,
businesses has to come to
but
us.
if they're not bringing anything to us, that's what I'm saying.
Mhm,
I mean,
Okay,
then,
fair enough.
yeah.
Right. Alderman Milwaukee.
Okay. Thank you. And once again, I just have some questions about how this is going to work out because I just wonder if we have the administrative firepower to carry this stuff out. From what I understand, at least in talking to the folks at the EDC, this is not easy stuff. It takes quite a while to bring forth those sort of economic engine type of jobs, and so I'm just you know I'm just curious how, because I'm an administrator, so I tend to think about how is this going to work out, on a day-to-day basis. Is it going to take one person, two people, three people? My understanding of EDC is that us, McLean County and Normal kind of pool our resources together so that they can do the job on behalf of the region. So I'm just unsure that we are actually able to do that unless it requires, just like Diana said, a significant shift in how we allocate resources and change in policy, I guess. So those are my questions.
Alderwoman Burgess. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to? Okay. Alderwoman Burgess.
I think we're greatly expanding the scope of the initiative right now, which is just to update a document that the city has, a policy in terms of economic development. And I'm not entirely sure that staff needs our direction to do that. I feel like that's probably a best practice, that these documents are updated at regular intervals, whatever that may look like. Is it 10 years? Is it 5 years? Is it, every year? I don't know the answer to that. So I think that perhaps and that's where I'm beginning to see that we have a little bit of an issue, or I'm concerned about these new alderman initiatives because we don't get any staff feedback. There may very well be an answer. This could already be in progress, and we don't know that because right now we're operating in a vacuum, and I feel like it's leading to these longer conversations. So that's a bigger picture thing here, but I feel like perhaps this is one that could be answered quite easily. Maybe staff's already looking at updating this, or maybe there are new best practices in this area, and and they don't need our guidance. But as for our policy, yeah, it should be updated on a regular interval. Should it be done in a way that maximizes our impact on the community? Absolutely. But what that looks like, I'm not sure that I'm willing to say to staff it has to be focused on this specific area because we're not the economic development experts. That's not our background. It's, we hire a specialist for that. So I would hate to close doors on what that document might look like. And they certainly would have the better understanding of how our current system interplays with EDC and be an advantage because I know they work very closely with them. So I just, I'm not sure. It's hard to say, yeah, let's update the policy, but other than that, I'm not sure what I would want to say without some input from staff. Thank you.
Alderwoman Schmidt.
I'm supportive of this, and I guess I think that this is an opportunity for us to make sure that our economic development policy aligns with the larger economic development community. I also think it's and I hear the same things that Scott's talking about of, really creating some jobs that are going to hold people here. When I look at the kinds of jobs that I think we might grow, this could be a document that allows small businesses and the entrepreneur and the independent businessman to launch his or her businesses more easily. It's the one-stop shop. It's an attitude. I think this is a policy that reflects an attitude we have about wanting to retain people and to build new and interesting jobs. So I'm supportive.
Okay. Anything else? All right. So at this point, the question, I don't know how many hundreds of percent overtime we are by here, but just a quick, this is the economic development policy, if I'm stating this correctly, because this is your proposal, to update this. This was updated in 2000, well, actually, it was created in 2011, and could be give or take a year, but I'm pretty sure it was 11 because the previous full-time city manager, Mr. Hales, did talk about redoing this years ago when I was mayor. But it's the policy itself. But you did add a descriptor to the policy. Okay. So, Alderwoman Bray? Yes, sir.
Yes, and I would add that, you've appropriately outlined that you say 5 to 10 hours. So if staff is taking more than 5 to 10 hours, then the city manager could revisit with us on where we are with this and whether or not this was a Herculean task or, maybe it's already in progress and this will be a quick win. So I vote yes on this one.
Okay. Again, it could be, as I believe Alderwoman Burgess suggested, best practices, a fairly quick thing, or not. But I see. Alderwoman Howman.
If we're looking at this as best practices, then yes.
Okay. Alderman Black? Yes. Okay. Okay. Alderwoman Painter?
Yes.
Alderwoman Burgess?
Yes.
Alderman?
Say yes.
Alderman Sage?
If it's to update the policy, yeah, I mean, it needs to be updated. But if we're starting to get into what I think is possible change in division of labor between what I think the EDC is charged with doing historically and what the city has done historically, then I'm not in favor of that unless Tim, you're able to clarify in conversations that my understanding of kind of where that division of labor is between the EDC and be an advantage and the city and the town and the work we do, then I think Diana raises a good point, right? If we're gonna take some of that scope back that we haven't had before, which is what Scott's initiative is suggesting with career with economic drivers, then we're going to take some money back too to help cover the cost of us doing that too. So update the economic policy, yeah. Anything beyond that, no.
Alderman Matthey.
I was trying to think what I was going to say about this, and I think Karen hit it on the head so exactly with what I was thinking that I'm a yes on this, and for all the same reasons she already outlined.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We move on to the next item. Alderman Black again. Direct city manager to provide current practices for nuisance properties.
And I don't want to take away Tim's thunder on this. I know he's been working on it. I know that all of us get lots of calls, and I think Johnny sent me an email earlier with our current practices. But I know that I get lots of calls about properties, what other communities do about these sorts of properties, how they handle it, and I think that's already in the works. Is that correct, Tim? Yeah. So it may not even need a vote this evening.
Okay. Are there questions, comments, concerns about directing the city manager to provide current practices for nuisance properties? Okay. I don't see any. Oh, yes. Oh.
No, I mean, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I didn't see your light, so okay. Okay. All right. So now we move on to the next item, and I'll turn once again to Alderman Black. Direct city manager to explore adding a fee for paying a water bill by cash or check.
Yeah, and so just at a high level, this is my last one, I'd kind of viewed the Alderman request form as kind of a conversation about these sorts of topics and not a nuanced, fleshed out proposal about what that would look like. So I apologize if I didn't give everyone what they were looking for in terms of all the specifics. But this has been a good conversation because I think it's giving staff some direction on some of these issues that all of us are passionate about. During the heat of the budget cycle, and having done a couple budget cycles now, we often focus on things that are kind of punitive for like fees. If you get too much water, your bill goes up. But this is an example of where I think we should be doing an incentive for what I think would be better behavior in that if you have an automatic bill pay, you're saving staff time. You're saving us resources from having to have your check mailed out to Kansas City and then come back. You're saving us time in terms of when we have to do audits on paper trails. And there's a lot of other benefits too to having a automatic bill pay. And eventually this might roll into where, if you have a paperless billing, we'll give you a credit or you have a surcharge if you want to have a paper bill. And the theory here is that we are using a fee. I don't know what that fee looks like. And the concept is, city manager, are the council majority interested in reviewing a fee to add to a water bill if you're paying it with cash or check? Because that costs us more time, resources, and energy to process those payments.
Just to clarify, so you're, in a sense, also, you're suggesting we establish automatic bill pay, but if you don't use automatic bill pay,
No.
then we will
the
charge
only
you?
the only piece that's on here is that if you are if you're paying your water bill or city services bill with cash or check, that there would be a surcharge added to your bill.
But if you pay by automatic bill pay.
Right.
So,
I'm sorry, I misheard you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all I was,
I'm sorry.
I was just trying to clarify.
I apologize.
So you're saying automatic bill pay is what
or
we
via
want.
credit card.
Or credit card, okay. Well,
I know somebody's going to say, well, we eat a 2.5% fee or whatever the fee is on the credit cards, but we get that money right away.
But at this point, it's really just a question of are we interested in pursuing this? There would be some kind of fee by a water bill, cash or check. And we'll just go ahead and go around. Those who have their lights.
No.
All of them? No?
No, not everyone is a millennial or can or wants to pay their bills
Okay.
electronically.
Alderwoman Schmidt.
I know way too many people who don't have a credit card, maybe don't qualify for credit, they don't have easy access to a computer. Is it even legal to charge somebody if they're paying with cash? I no.
Okay. Good question. I don't, anyway, Alderwoman Painter.
I think you should always make it easy for people to pay their bills, and this is just another stumbling block. I vote no.
Alderwoman Alderwoman Burgess. Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman. Alderman.
I know. Watch out. It's almost time. I'm waiting for it. Stage fright. I would say no. We gotta, if people are paying for cash, these days, too many credit cards being used. I would say let's incentivize people who are giving you cold, hard cash, And not everybody, like Diana said, not everybody's a millennial. Not everybody has the same situation. So I think it's just best to just let things, be the way they are.
Alderman Sage.
No.
Alderman Matthey.
So I think that I am neither on this one, just from the fact that I think that, well, first of all, I just helped my mom move on Sunday, and so I am designated computer guy for all things for my parents. And so I called and I signed her up for internet access, and there was that, of course, the promotional 12-month price on that, and I read the fine details to see what they are, and in the fine details were you can only get this price if you sign up with automatic bill pay, either credit card or ACH withdrawal from your checking account, so you do not have to have a credit card, and you have to have paperless billing. And if you did not, the price was not available. It was actually $10 more per month. In the private sector, I think that is absolutely the direction things are going for all the reasons Scott outlined. The biggest being that staff time is our number one cost center for the entire city. I think that it's fair to say 65% of the budget deals with employees. I think, though, that this is probably a bigger first step than people in Bloomington are used to. However, I would support getting rid of fees for people who do want to use automatic bill pay. Right now, we charge a convenience fee when the reality is the people that it's most convenient for is us, not necessarily the end user, but it's actually more convenient for us to get the money on the exact day we're expecting it, to send out a paperless bill, to not have, to deal with people who forgot to pay their bill and have to send out repeat bills and expecting and collections and all that sort of stuff. So I think charging the fee is probably someplace in the future. But I think right now the best first step is to not charge people who want to do the thing that is most convenient for us, which is to do an automatic bill pay. So I would absolutely support getting rid of that fee and collecting those, especially since ACH withdrawal from checking accounts is way cheaper than the credit card processing fees. Those fees there's a reason why there's too big to fail banks. And but also things that I know that Tim and I have talked about in the past, for like things, maybe when we look at kiosks that are downstairs and have a kiosk where you can come in and you can put your money into the kiosk and pay your bill that way instead of, there's a person there sometimes, but do we have to have multiple people staffing the window all the time? Is there shared opportunities with the county for a payment window of some sorts? Are there, what do those opportunities look like? But I think that the first step would be absolutely to get rid of our so-called supposed convenience fee that's on those bills to actually make it easier for more people to do what's most convenient for us.
Okay. All right. I think the consensus is that there is not support for staff to go forward with this. At this point, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Alderwoman Schmidt. Is there a second? Second by...
Thank you, everyone.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Before I do the second, happy birthday. Bad mayor. Happy birthday, Alderwoman Kim Bray. So did I have a first? Who was the first?
I made the motion.
Okay. You do not want that. Then you'd really be mad at me. Okay. We will have a motion by Alderwoman Schmidt. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Matthey. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.